in search of soil.
I don't know about other people's experience with having two different types of teas for foliar versus soil application. I don't I don't necessarily go by that, but I will say this can get very confusing. So compost tea, to get very specific, is where you put compost in a mesh bag, put it in water, you're agitating that water for a certain amount of time through or adding air to that water and adding microbial foods. And the importance of compost tea is the addition of foods for microbes. So you're feeding microbes, getting them to reproduce. So just say, I mean, it's far greater than this, but say you start out with 100 microorganisms, you're feeding them and trying to get them to reproduce to 100,000 microorganisms. Through that reproduction, the bacteria and fungi create glues, which helps those microorganisms to be stickier. So when you're providing a foliar application, it's much more likely that the microorganisms are going to stick on the surface of whatever you're spraying. It's great to put that onto soil, but you don't necessarily need that on soil. So you could use just an extract on soil. An extract is different from tea in that you're putting compost in a mesh bag, you're putting it in water, and you possibly are aerating it, but you're not putting any microbial foods in there. So you're extracting those, what I said was 100 microorganisms, just say 100 microorganisms. The point is to extract those 100 microorganisms into the water, but then you're not getting them to reproduce. So you're not getting those glues from reproduction, and you can put that onto the land. If anybody's just a quick kind of how to, like if anybody was interested in doing that, you could kind of increase your population by putting compost in a bag, extracting it, dumping out that compost. So now you've got 100 microorganisms. Refill your bag with compost. Do the same thing. So now you should have 200 microorganisms. You can increase the population that way without adding foods. But at a certain point, you're getting so much sediment in there, you can't keep doing that because you're going to clog up your applicators. Also, quick note, I may do an extract, but then I'm not trying to get, the whole idea of the foods is getting microorganisms to reproduce. I'll make an extract and then put it into a sprayer or whatever, and then add foods for microorganisms like humic acid or fish hydrolysate. That's going to benefit the microorganisms that are in the soil, but it's also going to be foods for those microorganisms that you're spraying out into the soil that will help them to proliferate once you get it onto the surface of the soil and plants. So I'll do that same thing with compost tea. And again, I know you didn't ask this question, but for people who are interested in applying compost tea, we did experiments at Rodale at 5 gallons of extract per acre with a large-scale corn farmer. And not to get off the subject, but this is a guy who was doing research with Monsanto in the 70s. He'd been a chemical salesman. He did research with Penn State, who does both conventional and organic research, but then known to do a lot of research. So this guy was really big-time chemicals. When we first met with him, and Elaine was talking, he was using the term snake oil all the time in reference to compost tea. He was very skeptical, more skeptical than yourself probably. I went out with him to put in an application at 5 gallons per acre, and it was supposed to be 500 acres. We ended up doing 100 acres. And I went out with him at the end of the season in his combine to harvest, and he was telling me, he's like, before I even get my numbers back, and I can already see that I've got more corn going, and I even had some damage from deer, and I can tell that my crop this year is going to be larger than other years. And he went on to work with Rodale for another maybe 2 or 3 years. I don't know if he still is or not, but that was at 5 gallons per acre. My point behind this is I normally do 20 gallons per acre, but still, if you think about that little amount on a whole acre, it's very hard to get that little amount on a whole acre. So you need to dilute compost tea down. And in the water that I dilute compost tea down in, so say you've got an acre of land and it takes you 50 gallons to spray that whole thing. So then you would want to dilute your tea down into 50. I think I said 50 gallons. I may have used the wrong word. It takes 50 gallons to cover that amount of land. You'd want to dilute your tea down, if you're using 20 gallons. 30 gallons of water, 20 gallons of tea equals 50 gallons, and then you'll spray that out. So in that water, what I'm getting at is that I will add foods to my water so that it provides more food for the microorganisms that I'm adding in with the tea to help even feed it more once it gets onto foliar and soil surfaces.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out some of the great clips and watch the full interviews right here on In Search of Soil.